Well, hello again, and thanks for joining me for this second part of what looks like it's going to be a multi-part project. It's a fairly complicated construction, or certainly for somebody of my skill level. So this is part two. And in this part, I'm going to be working on the final part of the base of the tapping stand, which is the block that holds the columns and attaches the columns to the base. I'll be honest, I'm a little bit nervous about this one. This is going to involve drilling a rather large piece of steel quite accurately and with skill. And I've already got a comment about the first part of the video where somebody very kindly pointed out that he felt that I was counterboring much too fast, that my drill was too quick. And I'm sure he's right, actually. I think I got away with it because my counterbores were brand new and very sharp, but I think that for this part I'm going to slow my drill right down to drill through this quantity of steel and keep it very carefully lubricated. So I'm a little bit nervous, but we'll see how it goes, and I hope you enjoy it. I hope you keep watching, and please keep comments coming. Tell me what I'm doing wrong, tell me what I'm doing right, and please subscribe. So I'll show you the part that we're going to be working on, and then we'll be in the workshop. Thanks again for watching. Okay, so let's have a look at the part that I'm going to be working on in this part. It's the base of the column, the bit that's going to be holding the column in place. Here it is, it's part number 18. And it looks fairly straightforward at first glance, but actually there are a few things which I'm rather concerned about, which I will describe now. I've already described my worries and concerns about my drilling speed. It's going to have to be really, really careful, because I'm having to drill two 10mm holes through this block of 40 by 50 by 50 steel, and that does make me a tiny bit nervous, I have to confess. The other thing is, in the drawings the columns are held in place with these grub screws here, which are M5 grub screws. Now I can do that, that's not an issue, tapping and drilling those holes for the grub screws, but I'm just wondering if there's actually a reason for that, except for maybe disassembling the whole thing, because I might be quite tempted just to use Loctite and lock these columns in. Anyway, I'm going to have to think about that, but I just do it the way he says, and you know, this Harold Hall, he knows what he's talking about. The other issue is that there are these 4 holes here. Now those 4 holes, if you remember, are the ones that are going to take the screws that are going through the bottom of the base that we've already made. Now, it's all very well following these measurements and drawings, but that's assuming that I have drilled the holes in the base as accurately as that. So that's making me a little concerned. Also, I don't have very much of this steel. I certainly don't have enough for 2 goes at it, so unless I want to buy another piece of quite expensive 40 by 40 steel stock, I don't want to mess this up. So I'm going to have to be quite careful about how I do that, whether I try and match the holes to the holes I've already drilled, which I think is the more sensible thing to do. Anyway, so let's get started on it, and let's carry on. So I've sawn my piece of steel. It's 40mm by 40 and 50 across, and I'll include a little bit of a shot of that, because just to show you how it was done. But I'm not actually very happy with it, and I think there was something about my bandsaw cutting something so deep. On the original edge that the company sent me, I don't know if you can see this, but it's very, very square. I hope you can see that. But on the side that I sawed, it's not. Now, I'm not sure this is a huge deal. I think I could probably get away with it, and you could probably get away with it. But you know what? I have a milling machine, which I love and I don't get to use enough, so I am going to face it flat, and that way we will have a nice even block that I can start work with. So I'm going to get on and do that. Okay, so here's the piece. I've now milled it flat. I showed you that. I love that finish that you get when you faced off a piece of steel. It's such a pleasure, and now I'm really happy. It's wonderfully square in every direction. So I know that when I'm measuring from either side, I've got a square face. So this is again the piece that I'm going to do, and I just wanted to show you my concern about these holes. This is the base. It's missing one piece under here, but you'll see these holes. If I follow Harold Hall's measurements exactly, I'm not totally confident that I will be able to that they will fit. So I need to work out a way of making that safe. I might actually make a little template. I might actually use his measurements on another piece and see if it fits or not before I drill my own piece, which is really the only piece I've got left. The off-cut isn't long enough. So I think that's maybe what I do next. So I found this scrap piece of aluminium, which I think will probably do as a template. This edge is really quite square, or certainly square enough for my purpose right now. So I'm going to put the block on like this. And I'll go and cut that now, and then I'll have a fairly accurate template to drill the holes and see if they fit happily on the base. The irregularities of this angle, so I'm starting quite high just to get the top off here. Bang on. Great, that looks all right. I'll check it again against the other one. Okay, so let's see. Yeah, that's pretty damn good. So now, if I mark this out according to Harold Hall's drawings, and I drill it according to his measurements, I will find out if it works on that. And if not, then I can readjust the measurements accordingly. Anyway, that's the plan. Let's see if it works. Okay, I have assembled the whole base, and I've put the M5 screws that are supposed to go into this. And you know, I made this template, so these were following Harold Hall's exact measurements, and they don't fit. They're not far off, but they don't fit. So I'll try the other way as well. And they certainly wouldn't be good enough if I had to tap and screw them in. We would just have a jam. There's always one that's slightly out. So I'm bloody glad I did that, because if I'd just drilled into this, it wouldn't have worked, and I would be very frustrated, and I would have wasted this not cheap piece of steel. So what I've decided to do is to use a 5mm punch, and I'm going to clamp this piece of steel to the base, mark it, and then I will hammer the holes in position, because this will be the exact diameter of the hole, so it should be pretty accurate, and then I will have a rough guide, and then it's just up to me in some way being able to drill accurately enough so that we can save the situation. I hope it works. I'm going to give it a shot. I'll try and keep you keep filming as much as I can. I'm going to have to try and keep these in a I've got to find a way of clamping these down so that they don't move, and I'm actually thinking of maybe this sounds awful, but welding them up here just to keep them straight. Anyway, I might do a little bit of thinking about that and see if I can get on with just some clamps, but I don't think I've got engineer's clamps that are big enough to clamp this on. Anyway, let me think about that, and I'll come back. Right, so this is not what I wanted to do, but I haven't come up with a solution. I haven't got the right kind of clamps that can do this effectively. So I've kept the screws into these four pieces so that they're aligned, and I'm just going to tack weld the ends so that I can then confidently mark the steel block, because then I'll be able to clamp it more comfortably without the screws in. So a little bit of cheating, but it's all I can do right now. Not pretty, but it'll do the job, I suspect. Don't know if that's focused or not. Hope it is. Anyway, right, so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn this round. The screws can come out, and then I can now mount the block onto here and then mark it. So I've marked the steel to make it hopefully a bit easier, and I'm going to align this up with the base as well as I can. Sadly, I don't have a G-clamp that's big enough, but these are generally pretty strong. There, hopefully. Turn this over like that, and my 5mm punch, which is going through like that. I'll support it from beneath. Actually, maybe if the 5.5 would fit as well, because it looks a little bit loose in there. Yeah, it's much better. Okay. Actually, I'm going to get a heavier hammer. No, I'm not. I'm not sure that's all the way through. Is it all the way through? I'll put the smaller one just in case. Okay, let's see if it's moved. No, good. Oh, a little bit. Oh dear, oh dear. Mind you, this is a bit of a long shot. No, that hasn't worked at all. I've got one good mark, and the others are all over the place. That's not a mark even, though. Okay, so that means that my holes are not perfect. Aha. Yeah. Where's the other one? What is wrong with that one? That's not going through. Well, I'm going to file that through because that's an issue. Okay, I'll be back. Alright, so let's have another go at this. And first thing I'm going to do, of course, I'm going to make a little mark around this hole so I know that's the one from the previous attempt. And I've come up with another idea which might be a bit more effective. I don't know, might not. That's what we're here to do, to find out. And get that nice and clear. And I thought, a welder's clamp. A welder's clamp might be just the business. Okay. Now again, using the 5mm, not the 5.5mm. That was a complete red herring. So let's try again. Okay, moment of truth. I feel a bit like I've cooked a cake. I baked a cake. I want to see how it's come out. Bingo. Oh, and that's nice actually. The first hole went right back into the one from before. Okay, so there we are. Now I've got to drill these holes. I don't know if you can see that, but actually they've come out pretty well. They're really clear marks for me to start drilling. And now there's the next sort of scary bits of oh, do you know what I didn't do? I didn't mark which side was which because they'll all be different. Well, there's nothing I can do about that. I might play the video back to see which way I turned it, which might be the easiest thing. Anyway, the next bit is back to the drill. Okay, so we're back at the drill. I want these holes to be super accurate, so I'm going to take enormous care. I've slowed the drill right down as well, because I do not want any mistakes on this one. I'm probably right in the frame right now, but I'll disappear in a second. Anyway, you see how how slow I have. I'm drilling at the moment. I don't want to break the center drill bit in the steel at this juncture. I really don't. Okay, I'm going to carry on doing those. I don't need to film all of it, and I'll come back when I'm going to actually start drilling the hole. Now, if you remember, in part one, I mentioned that these holes, or actually a lot of the holes I made in the previous video, had to be tapped to a particular depth. These need to be tapped to a depth of 12 millimeters, and I need to drill it to a depth of 15 millimeters. So I've marked a line here, which I hope you can see. I've added a little light here, which hopefully will make it a bit more obvious. Let me see if I zoom in. Oh, probably need to focus as well. Hope you can see that. So that's 15 millimeters, and I'm going to set the depth gauge on my drill to that 15 millimeters. It should be right. I will tighten that with a pair of pliers, because as I've told you before, I'm a bit belts and braces about things like that. Not everything, but some things. So that should now stop at 15 millimeters. Perfect. Now, the other thing is these holes need to be tapped to a depth, tapped M5. So I'm going to start by drilling them. I mean, the final drill size needs to be 4.1 millimeters for an M5 tap. So I'm going to do it in increments. I'm going to start with a 3mm bit, start the hole that way, so that I'm going to try and do it gently. Okay, and remember that I've slowed the drill right down, and I'll be doing this in little bursts. I've hit the stop. Okay, so I'm going to carry on doing the other three holes with this drill bit, and then we'll switch to a 4.1 mil, and then I will tap the holes M5. And I've now got the 4.1 drill bit, which is the final drill bit before tapping. And of course, very importantly, I've had to re-measure the depth, because I couldn't guarantee that I put the drill bit at the right depth. So that's an important one to remember. Readjust your depth stop when you've changed the drill bit. Okay, so let's do this. This should be quite a bit quicker, of course, because the hole is pre-drilled. Okay, so I should now be ready to tap. Okay, so time to tap again. I'll put some oil in the hole. Line it up, use Harold Hall's little tapping guide to make sure that I start at least slightly straight. This is probably an absolutely awful angle to film this. see. If you can see the thread, probably not. Okay, well listen, I'll keep doing that and I'll come back when they're all tapped. Alright, so I've now tapped the holes and it's time to find out if this stuff has worked. So I've marked the holes because you remember from the last shot I wasn't quite sure that I got it right, and then I played the video back to see if it was all right. And now is the moment of truth to see whether I've got this at all right. And as I said before, it feels a little bit like you've been baking a cake and you don't know how it's going to come out. Okay, so that's one in. Again, I'm not going to over tighten because I've got to see. Is that in? No, it's not in. Okay, that's in, I think. Yes. Okay, so far so good. Again, keep it nice and loose so you don't, you've got a little bit of movement. So pray for me because these are the ones that are going to be really telling. We're in. Moment of truth. It's so, oh, damn. It is so humid tonight that I'm dropping the tool every 3 seconds. And then my niece who's filming this is just laughing at me, which she does quite regularly anyway. Look, you can probably even hear her laughing. It's very unsettling. Oh my god. Try and keep the camera shake to a minimum, thank you. This is awkward. Seriously. So now Shane is going to be immortalized in this video as the person who's laughing at her uncle. There we go. We've done it. It's straight. I'm very excited. It worked. It was a lot of work to get that straight, but that's a huge moment for this, because if that had gone wrong it would have been a real nightmare, because it wouldn't have fitted properly, it wouldn't have been strong, I couldn't have got the absolute straight down. So I'm very happy. So I think I'm going to leave it there for now, and then the next job is that we're going to drill the 10mm holes for the actual column. So now I'm at the really scary part of it, which is drilling the 10mm holes. And the first one is 14mm away from center. I have no idea what that hole there is. I can't work that one out, but anyway, it doesn't matter. And the other one is 18mm from that one. But I decided it was safer to actually measure everything from the same side. So that is 14mm, and that is 14 plus 18, that is 32mm. So that's what I'm going to start drilling. And again, these are going to be drilled to 10mm. So I've got to take this super easy, super delicate. I'm going to make a center hole first, and then I'm going to start with smaller drill bits, and then eventually work out to up to the 10mm. So that's what we're going to do next. Okay, so center drill hole, much bigger drill, center drill this time, because I can afford it, because it's going to be a 10mm hole. But again, I'm trying to be as accurate as possible, so I've got my crazy glasses on. So again, I'm going to do this. I'm going to drill in increments, not to put too much stress on the drill bits and you know, overheat. So at the moment I've got about a 4mm drill bit, and then I'll go up to a 6mm drill bit, and then probably an 8mm drill bit, and then a 10mm drill bit. So I'm not going to film all of that. We'll do bits and pieces and. I'm getting close, and there we go, all the way through. Okay, right, so I'm going to keep doing that, and I'm going to go up in drill sizes until I get to 10mm. So here we have it. There are the two 10mm holes, and now I've got to decide whether I'm going to drill through for the grub screws, and I'm still split about this. I noticed that when I try and put this 10mm bar in, it goes in but not properly, and that is probably because often these bars are actually adapted imperial sizes rather than true metric. So what I'm going to do in the first instance, I'm going to put this in the lathe and then rub it with some emery paper, which should be able to get it down to an acceptable diameter to go through the holes. I'm very tempted not to drill the grub screw slots. I'm really trying to think of what it would achieve. If I want to dismantle it, I can just unscrew this block, but I suppose it's much quicker to unscrew the posts, the columns. Okay, look, since I'm making Harold Hall's design, I might as well do as he does. It's a bit of an annoying, tricky thing to do, but let's not be lazy. So I am going to do that. I probably won't film it. I'll just mark it out again, drill through and tap. I think he recommends M5, if I remember correctly, M5 grub screws. So I'll probably do that off camera. Okay, so I've drilled and tapped these holes that will actually show up quite nicely through the middle of those holes, so I'm quite pleased with that. A couple of things to note while I did that. That's a very deep tap. I took enormous care because, again, snapping the tap in here would have been a disaster. I would have been quite upset with myself, so I took it very easy. I removed the tap quite frequently and put more oil, cleaned the tap, did it again so that it went through nice and clean. Obviously at the end you're left with a bit of a burr there, which has to be filed out, but there we have it. So the next thing I've got to do is to make sure that these can fit in, so I'm going to go and try and do that in the lathe. So this is where we're at now. I've cleaned up the base, it's screwed onto this, the grub screws in, holding the column, which I filed down so that it fit properly in the hole. It was a little bit over 10mm. But I don't know if you'll notice the deliberate error here. Yeah, another one of my deliberate errors. Let me try and explain. In the diagram, which I hope you can see, you'll remember that on here, one of the holes is offset, is further back than the other one. You may notice that I've had to turn it round so that the one nearest the edge is now on the inside instead of on the outside. I'm hoping that's not going to cause a problem, but let me explain how that mistake came about, because it's very easily made. If you remember, when I drilled the holes into the base of this, I had to keep a careful note of which hole was which, so that when it came to assembly, they would all fit into the correct hole. I did that fine. I paid huge attention to that, and if you remember, it worked fine. What I didn't do was, when I then marked out the 10mm holes, I marked them in the wrong place. So I didn't take note of those positions, and they should have been the other way round. Now, I have two choices. 3 of the screws fit in perfectly, the 4th one doesn't go in. So either I can have it the right way round, held with 3 screws, or I'm doing what I'm doing now, which is now that it fits beautifully with 4 screws, but the offset hole, the ones nearest the edge, is on the inside of the stand. It may be a balance thing when the whole column is together, that actually it's going to tip over, or it's not going to be balanced right. I can't imagine that happening, but it might be the case, in which case I'll go back the other way around. Okay, well, that's the end of part 2. Thanks very much for sticking with it. Most important, part 2 were 2 mistakes. The first one I've already described, which is drilling the 10mm holes on the wrong side of the base, which I hope won't be tragic. I hope I'll be able to fix that. The second mistake is really irritating because that was just stupidity, because I didn't order enough of the 10mm rod stock to make the column. They're supposed to be 280mm, and for some reason I ordered 500mm, which does not make 2 lengths of 280. I don't know how I did that. So anyway, I've got to order more of that. That's okay. So thank you very much for sticking with it. If you like, please subscribe. If you've got some constructive criticism and feedback, please let me know. It's really useful to me. And if you like it, you can tell me too. That's nice to hear. All right, thank you very much.